Hey everyone, welcome to 100 Words or Less, the podcast. This is episode number 3, and we're rolling. It feels good. I really like to be able to put these out on a regular basis, and so far I've gotten some cool feedback from everybody, and I really appreciate all of you taking the time to check it out. And so follow us on Twitter at 100 Words Podcast. Or you can email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And give us show suggestions, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see. Because, I want to make sure that, we're doing fun stuff on here. And that's exactly what I want to be doing to please the people, so to speak. And also, when you visit iTunes, subscribe to our podcast. That way you'll get new episodes every time we publish them. And drop us a review as well. The more reviews we get, the higher placed our podcast gets, and hopefully the more people listen. Before we got to the interview today, I wanted to bring in a friend who I did my previous podcast, First World Problems, with, Mr. Scott Arnold.
Hello.
So we wanted to keep Scott involved with my friendship, my life, and my cultural recommendations. And so he's going to be appearing occasionally on the show and talking to us about cool stuff that you need to be into. So, Scott.
Yeah.
I know you're typing, so I don't want to interrupt you.
Are you ready for my recommendations?
I am ready. Scott wanted to call these quick hits as well, which is a completely fine thing for me. So what are your quick hits?
First, I have a book, which, although it's early 2012... this book is suspected to be I don't know what the literary awards are, but this book
isn't it Peabody? No, that's like
I think there's like the Pulitzer.
Right. I think
there's
that's
a whole bunch.
Pulitzer, I think, is for journalism.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but anyway, so yes, this could claim that top prize, whatever it's called.
This book will be the historical top prize of the year.
Ooh.
So I'm told.
Okay. Hit me.
The book is called The Hemlock Club.
Okay.
And it is about Athens in the time of Socrates.
Okay.
And I had never paid attention in high school about any of that stuff. I saw 300.
That sparked your historical interest.
Yeah, that's about as close as I got. And this book is about, so Socrates is obviously the philosopher who kind of shaped a lot of Western thought. And sort of the godfather of, question everything and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And he is a guy who never wrote anything down. So everything you know about him or know that he said is from the second party. And this book aims to sort of tell the story of him through the city and his surroundings and that sort of thing.
Wow, that sounds... I had no idea that he didn't write anything down. I did take a philosophy course in college, and I did, like you, I didn't give a shit about any of that in high school, but when you do peel away one or two layers behind some of these philosophers, you're like, oh wow, these dudes are obviously pretty cool.
Yeah. So, it was a time where there were 200 different religions that were kind of more like cults, and he was sort of just kind of spoke to the more humanistic types of problems in life and how we could kind of directly control those.
Very cool. Is it a very long book?
It's like 400 pages.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's awesome.
Nice, very cool. Have you finished it, or are you in the midst of it?
I'm in the midst of it.
Very cool.
I have a record as well.
Oh, love it. Hit us.
This is a band that I know nothing about, except that I heard their music on someone's Tumblr. And they are called Tiger and Woods.
Okay. A very subtle reference to the golfer Tiger Woods.
Very subtle. Their record Wiki and Leaks is available for free on SoundCloud.
Interesting. What genre would you put them in?
It's like electronic, almost disco-y. No words.
You're a big fan of, would you compare it to a band like Com Truise?
Yeah, very Com Truise-esque.
Got it.
So listen to that a lot.
They could be playing a side stage at Coachella at some point in the future.
They would not be seen at Coachella, Ray. They're way above Coachella.
Oh yeah, that's true. They would be defined as sellouts if they did that.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe State Farm Insurance can pay for their flights out there, and they would be less of a sellout.
They wouldn't talk about that though.
That's true. They wouldn't promote it.
They just pull up on a skateboard or something.
That's awesome. Well,
what about you? What have you been reading?
I'm currently in the midst of Bill Simmons. He's a podcaster, ESPN writer, lover of pop culture. I'm in the middle of his basketball book. I honestly have never read a larger book than this. This thing is like maybe 1,400, 1,500 pages. It's absurd. And I've been reading it for like maybe 3 weeks, and I'm like halfway through it. It's unbelievable. You don't really think about how much detail one person can get into about a sport until they actually write a 1,500 page book about basketball. So
yeah, a lot of thought went into that.
You feel like it's like cultural criticism. Like this could be held up as like a person's thesis paper. That's how intense it is. So I'm currently reading that and enjoying it because it's now approaching basketball playoff season, and that's fun. So, well, Scott, thank you very much for checking in with us and giving us some smart things to listen to and read. My guest this week is Mr. Justin Smith from the band Graph Orlock, Dangers, and Ghostlim, as well as doing a record label called Vitriol Records. I've known Justin for years. Our old bands used to play together a lot, and then we would randomly see each other on tour, and it's just one of those things that both of us have been active for so many years in music, and our paths always keep running into each other, and it's very cool because he's always been a great dude, and now he's doing some really, really interesting things musically from all of the bands that I mentioned, and then obviously his own entrepreneurial spirit by starting up a record label. So Justin came over to my house one morning, and we hung out and talked. So here it is. Hope you enjoy.
It's super weird to think about, especially with like touring and shows and stuff like that. Like, there's people that you know for like 10 years and you don't know their last name.
Well, yeah, you know them by like their first name and band name.
You don't know how old they are.
Right, totally.
You don't know what anybody does, like aside from being in a band.
Totally.
Which is kind of like, I don't know. I always think it's kind of cool in a lot of ways, but then when you try to like get past that and try to not just be like show friends,
right?
Then you have to like push through that shit.
There has to be that additional layer of like effort, and it's not even so much effort. I think it's just a matter of like time, because obviously all of us have so many things going on, and it's like unless that person lives like next door to you, sometimes it's not easy enough to be like, oh yeah, let's go get coffee and whatever. And it's like sometimes when you do that, all you do is talk about like whatever the immediate common interests are, where it's like, whatever. If you and I were to have had, a meal in 2000, we'd be talking about both of our collective bands, like plans and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's what'll be fun for me. But so with that being said,
let's roll.
Yes, we are rolling.
Oh.
With that being said, so were you always born and raised in Southern California?
Yep.
Yeah?
I grew up in La Habra.
Oh, wow. So you're there.
Yeah, so I currently live 8 miles from where I grew up.
What?
And I've lived 2 places in my life.
Okay.
1, where I grew up.
Okay.
2, where I live now. So
wow. So you just transitioned immediately into not immediately, but obviously you just like moved basically down the street.
Yeah, I moved just in like, 15 minutes away, or just side streets. But
yeah.
I never really moved out when I was younger.
Right.
Because I was gone all the time.
Yeah, there's no reason to.
So by the time I got to be kind of an adult,
yeah,
I was like, I'm out.
Right. Well, yeah, and I assume one of the reasons that you compounded by the fact that you were not home a lot of the time, and obviously an expense issue where it's like, why would I move out when I'm not there?
It's like paying rent for like a space.
Storage space, yeah.
And then I ended up moving out and taking all my friends with me into my house, which was 4 years of nice annoyance, I suppose.
Yeah.
To be pleasant.
I'm sure at times it's absolute chaos, and then there's other times where it's like, I would like to kind of have my own space away from all these people I spend all the time with.
Yeah, it was weird because it was like Graph Orlock and Ghostland. We basically almost the whole band.
It was your house, basically. Yeah.
We're in one house, and then we have built a practice space in the garage, and it's like someone was practicing every day, and then you go on tour, and you spend like a month together, and you come back, and you live together, and then you go on tour again, and it's like miserable.
It's not like, I remember one of the I wouldn't say most difficult, but just like the bummer, like when you're ending tour and you have to drop everyone else off at their, dude.
Last stop.
The worst.
Every time, man.
The worst, where you're just like, you're thinking in your head, you're like, all right, I have to drop this dude off in Corona. I have to drop this person off. You're just like, you know, by that time you've been driving for like 18 hours. And
you're thinking like 500 miles ahead.
Totally.
You're
in Texas and you're like, God.
That I have to go home last because the van goes to my house.
Right. So I'm sure that was one convenient part about all you guys living.
Get out.
You guys just pull up and you're like, all right, see you later.
But since then, in the last year or so, about a year, everybody kind of like split up.
Sure.
Adam moved, and Neil from Ghostland, he moved back up to the Bay for like he finished his MA. So now everyone's gone. Nice.
So now it's your own place, so to speak.
It's pleasant when people come back and stay. So but it's only pleasant because I'm not there all the time.
Right. You're like, it's nice to visit. Like, thank you, but I'm glad that you don't live here anymore.
Right.
So you living? Well, yeah, I was saying. So you living obviously with your parents. I presume that they were obviously like supportive in some way, shape, or form with what you were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, they were always pretty cool. I mean,
did they understand? Did they have any concept of like what you were doing in the sense of like?
Yeah, they went to like. I mean, very early on, they went to like some cruise shows. Like,
sure.
In like '98.
Right.
And then every now and then, I could get them to go. Maybe like once every couple of years, I could get him to go to a show. Like,
right.
Maybe last year or the year before, I got him to come see us play a show at Junior Action on my birthday, like for my birthday, and then I called him out.
That's perfect. Well, you have to do that with a parent because they get, no matter what you may or they may think of your music, they would still have a sense of like pride where it's like, oh yeah, like there's my son or my daughter or whoever.
People circle pitting.
Yeah.
But no, they've always been pretty good. I mean, I was there till like I was 24 or something. But that being said, like our relationship got better as time went on because I was gone so much, and they were always like cool about the music. I mean, they're aware it's annoying,
right?
Abrasive music,
right?
I mean, better than doing something stupid.
Right. Well, that's what I always find. I always find it so difficult when people obviously have a strained relationship with their family, and then obviously are doing the touring band thing where it's just like, man, it sucks you had to move out when you're 18 because it's like, I from a financial perspective, it's just like it's so nice to be able to just like come home to a home that's there, and you know your mom and dad are there, and it's like, oh, that's so nice.
It's even like it's weird to think about it. Like now, when you come back from. Like this last summer, I was gone for 2 months,
right?
Doing like 2 tours, and you get home and it's like when all that stuff is just on you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like it takes like 2 weeks to get your life back together.
Totally,
especially when you go straight back to work. And
right?
Like, what the fuck am I doing?
Right. Yeah, it's like you have to pick up all the pieces of the stuff that's obviously been quote unquote left behind, or like like all the bills you weren't able to pay immediately and all that type of stuff.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's adult shit, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's part of it. I mean, that's a trade-off being able to go and play for like 60 days and then come back.
Right. You're like, it's not too bad. Like usually people obviously are able to take like a 2-week vacation in the summer, and essentially
once a year.
Right. Exactly. But and even though touring with a band obviously isn't exactly a vacation, there's a lot of hard work involved. So do you think like obviously since you've traveled a ton, like, do you think there's any, do you have any burning desire to obviously like live anywhere else or anything like that? You're just like, yo, I really like Southern California.
This, I actually talked to Adam about this quite a bit, is that touring in the U.S., all that has made me done is not want to live anywhere else in the U.S.
I agree.
There's like places I like. I like Louisville. I like Boston. I like New York. I would like to spend some more time in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Like
the city proper. Yeah.
Like longer. I mean, I've spent like little chunks here and there, but
right.
I like Portland. I like Seattle. But when it comes down to like long term living somewhere, mostly also because I ride a motorcycle, I don't own a car. So
got it.
It's like next to impossible to do that all year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You'd have to put that away for a while.
But in terms of internationally, I still am planning at some point to like go live in Berlin for a while.
Yeah.
I really like Berlin.
Sure.
And Tokyo is super cool, but I think it would be like overload on my brain.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Especially food wise. So
yeah. Like I don't even know where to begin with that.
You gotta be too careful with what you eat there because I mean if you have any dietary constraints, it's like next to impossible if you don't have a Japanese person with you all the time.
It's a landmine everywhere. So with your parents being supportive and stuff like that, as you were growing up, like, how was like high school and like when did you first kind of get introduced to like independent music and what was sort of your gateway into that?
Let me think.
I know.
I got into, I'm just going to call it punk.
Sure, yeah. For lack of a better term.
When I was like in 5th grade.
Okay, that's pretty early.
It was actually via Metallica.
That's a good introduction.
Metallica, because I had an older brother that's like 4 years older than me, and I started playing guitar. So I would start actually playing guitar. I would play more Metallica songs so he could like solo over them.
Oh, so you the rhythm. You were like, yo, you can shred. I'll back you up.
Yeah, right when I started, it was like straight in metal, which I'm like glad is like a good way to start because most people will start playing like kind of weak shit.
Sure, 3-chord riffs, right?
And then it just in the long run kind of makes you better. I think like it prepares you more.
Yeah, you start off really hard and then you can work backwards from there.
And so Metallica covered this Misfits song.
Sure.
Or a couple Misfits songs, like on that
Garage Inc. box set or whatever. Or was it that?
It was before that. It was like during the Black album. They had a bunch of singles. And
oh
like
yeah, that's right. Yep.
And I listened to that and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
Because I already listened to Danzig too.
Okay.
Danzig.
Got it.
And then I went and bought like I would go over to this mall on the weekends. I would like take my allowance and I'd ride my bike over there. And every weekend I buy tape.
Nice.
From Sam Goody.
Of course.
And it was like. I remember because I do chores and stuff, and I would get $10.
Yeah.
And then I would have to like get 81 cents for the tax because all the tapes were $9.99. And I would go and I bought like every Misfits tape I could, and then I bought all the Dead Kennedys tapes I could.
Amazing.
Minor Threat tape.
And like you were just buying. I mean, obviously the Misfits you were buying for a reason, but the rest of the stuff you were just kind of buying like on a whim, or
they
like
kind of like started connecting in my brain.
Got it.
It's weird because when like all the gateway stuff when you're like a kid, it's really easy to be like drawn into like punk uniforms.
Of course.
It's like, and you see all these bands that people listen to, or like you have this list in your brain of bands you should like.
Right. Yeah, you're like, this is the prerequisite of what I need to get into. Yeah.
So you check them all out, and
so you were kind of going down the list.
Yeah, figuring out what you like and stuff. And then, like, so when I was in junior high, like really got into all that stuff.
Is that like when you started to go to shows and everything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
And you picked up the guitar for no reason in particular, or your brother was just like, hey, you should do this because this would be fun?
No, we both got, like when you get like kid presents.
Yeah.
And I got like this little tiny acoustic guitar. And I was like 6.
Got it. Okay.
And like way back when my dad played, but he didn't really. And then my brother and I both got him. He started playing his, and then I started playing mine.
Got it.
And then from then on, I got like real guitars when I was like, in junior high.
That's funny. I just imagine like, you say a little guitar, I know what you mean, but for some reason my immediate thought is like a little ukulele.
Yeah, it's pretty small still. I still have it too.
Really?
Yeah. And then from then, like, so that was like, and there's like kind of a disconnect for me when I was that age because I like punk and I still like metal.
Sure.
And then when I was like at the very end of 8th grade, I got into Sick of It All. And that like made sense because it was metal and punk.
Right.
Together.
Those the crossover, so to speak.
Like Minor Threat was a hardcore band. I mean, in their capacity and contemporarily they were hard.
Right.
It wasn't like heavy.
Yeah.
So that's why all that stuff always appealed to me, and then I was like into Propaganda and stuff like that, which is still one of my favorite bands.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's funny because so many people have similar experiences, but just like different gateways. Where it's like they have those touchstone bands where it's just like like this is how I got into this, and then everything else follows from there.
Yeah, Kyle, the singer of Gorlock.
Yep.
He somehow from like someone that he knew when he was younger gave him like 5 tapes that he didn't want, and one of them was Minor Threat. And then from then on, he was just like, yeah,
well, okay, this is my life now. And it's just so funny because I always think of like people that I say lucky because I think we are lucky to be involved in something that's like even though it is more mainstream than it ever has been, it's still like a secret society in a lot of ways because people still don't have a concept of what it means. Like, whatever. People you work with. Like when you say like you go on tour.
Normals.
Right, normals, yeah.
They think you're playing like a Olympic auditorium somewhere.
And then, so it's like, I wonder, people just getting introduced to music through like the most, whatever. Using a bad example, like a band like Sugar Ray. Like, someone in like 9th grade gets given like, a CD of Sugar Ray, and it's just like, they have such a different experience of like, because there's no scene obviously built in with that, where it's like they just get into the music and they're just like, yeah, dude, that song Fly is awesome. And like, there's nothing.
Slipknot records, too.
Right, exactly. It's like there's nothing really. There's so many barriers for them to feel like they can be a part of something, and then
it's really something to think about, especially like scenes. And once you start going to shows, it's just like all over.
Yeah,
because it's also back to what you said about it being more mainstream than it ever has been. I feel like it totally is. It's kind of like separated in a weird way.
Yeah,
but I feel like around a little bit after 2000, with all the bands from around here that were like getting huge.
Yep.
That's when I felt like it was like really. It wasn't like exciting for me or anything like that, but I acknowledged that I thought it was like this big thing.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it was totally palpable, and there was a reason why obviously so many bands came around during that time, and we're doing like so many different things. Like,
it's weird.
It totally is.
And then that kind of like, whatever you want to call it, like melodic metal, metalcore thing, just got like so like inundated with like,
of course,
because it became marketable in some way.
Yeah.
And like there's those bands that got big that from that time period, like I don't know, Unearth or As Are They Dying or whatever.
Right.
They still sound exactly the same.
100%.
That they did 10 years ago.
Exactly.
When they got big. It's just like...
Yeah. There's different variations of what they do, but 90% of it is still the same. Like, if they put out their newest record 10 years ago, it could have been obviously ahead of its time in some respects, but it still would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense, like right now.
Yeah, like with back to some of the bands from around here, it's like I was never a big like 18 Visions person.
Sure.
But and I didn't like the band they turned into.
Sure. But, I mean the more fashionable mainstream thing, sure.
But you got to give it to them for at least, I mean, you could argue that they were like trying to make it or whatever, but you got to give it for trying to like change it up.
Totally. 100%.
And then, I mean, it eventually failed, but
it
was like no bands would do that.
No, yeah. It's like they had, once they started to see what was happening and obviously introducing an element of style to what, aggressive music, like, bands didn't generally do that around here.
It was like STP with weird, like, distortion parts.
100%.
Or breakdowns.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, like you were saying, you and your brother playing guitar and everything, like what was your, because I presume that As Hope Dies was not your first band.
Actually, In Reply, which became...
I know, yeah.
Oh, no, I mean...
Yeah.
Just a little bit earlier.
Right.
That was the first, like, band that I played shows with. So it's like the same people.
That's pretty spectacular, because usually people have... Like, I mean, no joke, because I remember my first memory of In Reply was seeing you guys at Showcase, and I really can't peg down what year. But, I mean, it was when you guys had the split CD with Who's to Blame.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But I just remember...
This could have been, like, very beginning of 2000 or 99.
Yeah, it could have been. And I just remember watching you guys and being like, because I mean, by that time, been playing with Taken for a few years, and just as well as everybody, where it's like, if you're walking into a mostly local show, you're like, I'm really not going to see very many good bands, like if I've never heard of them before. And so I just remember walking and being like, wow, that's pretty good. Like I see like where you guys were coming from, and I just remember being kind of taken aback with that, being like, wow, like there's a very rare occasions where you just walk in on something and be like, that wasn't bad. So you're lucky the fact that you didn't have to play in terrible bands, because everyone always has that like one or two bands before the band that like actually starts to do something. So you're lucky there.
I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can look back and listen to the In Reply stuff and be like,
sometimes, yeah.
So how did you kind of get into that band? Like, who were you friends with, and how did that all transpire?
I have a friend named Troy who I play music with still, in different capacities, and he was friends with all those guys like Adam and Dave and Josh. They went to like a different school.
Ah, okay.
And,
so that was the bridge between the two crowds.
Yeah, but they practiced like over by where I lived, and I was like, I had known him since I was like 13, and I guess I was 17, and they like when I met them, they were playing like face-to-face type stuff.
Okay, yeah.
They have like one demo that's like super funny.
I don't think I ever heard that. I knew that there was a style change, but I didn't know it was that they had that you guys they had actually anything recorded.
Yeah. So I came in kind of in that, or when they were trying to kind of transition.
Sure.
But I was looking to play in a band, and they needed like a guitar player because Josh is like criminally inept.
Right. Criminally inept.
Like any instrument, but
sure.
I love him. He's just a lazy asshole.
I agree.
And and I was into all that stuff. Like at the time, like I guess we were like mutually into Strife and like Shiloh and
sure.
Secret All, and I like heavier stuff than they were into. But when we put it together, it started like going in that direction.
Interesting.
And I was in that band we started playing together and like writing songs and stuff, and we played together maybe for like 4 months, and then played the first show that we played at Coos.
Okay, and then that's when you started to play out.
Yeah.
Like, did you, like, prior to that, like you said, you were looking to play in a band, like, was just, people in your high school, like, was there kind of no one around that was, like, an immediate fit, and then that's why, obviously, like, this sort of...
Yeah, I don't know. It's, like, there were people that played, there was a couple bands that, like, totally sucked.
Of course.
And, we would just, like all my friends and I would just, like, fuck around and play, like...
Yeah.
Like, fake punk
covers or whatever. Yeah, sure.
We would just make like the worst songs because it was fun.
Right.
We had a fake band called Murder and the Suicides.
Oh. See, that's good. Yeah, that technically could have been your first band, even though I obviously never, like you said, it was fake.
And it was like fun. So, but even though it was like fake, we would, you get into like playing all the time, like when you're just fucking around.
Yeah.
And then that like transitions into actually playing.
Right.
So. The thing about those other guys I liked is that I didn't go to school with them, so it was like a different thing. And
sure.
We weren't into all the same stuff.
Right. It was like different levels of exposure, and
it was like a Venn diagram.
Sure.
But eventually, like, when you know people for a while, then you start kind of getting closer. And,
going towards the middle.
Different, the same stuff because you're around each other so much. But
right.
That was like, I was 17, we started playing shows, and then I just like haven't stopped since then.
Right. Then you just kept going. So then, then in Reply obviously turned into, well, not obviously, because there are people that listen to this outside of Southern California. Right. But yeah, so In Reply basically turned into As Hope Dies.
I was the only one that voted against that name change also.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. And like, I mean, I know that why the name was changed, obviously, because there was a bigger style shift. You were against it just because you're like, hey, we've already been doing this for so long?
No, it sounds like, it just sounds like a metalcore band name.
It's like that name is so perfect for that era. Like,
yeah, it's like, As I Lay Dying, If Hope Dies,
right.
That band from Syracuse.
Yep.
Like, just all these kind of participles or whatever.
Right. Hanging participles or
just three-word things. Like, it almost didn't even matter what the words were. It would just be like,
right. They need to be one syllable apiece.
Yeah. So I voted against that.
You're like, I am against this, but you gotta have voted.
And, yeah. And eventually, I guess the band went at the end after like kind of being really bored of that. You kind of get like it's super easy to get limited in like melodic music.
Very.
And it took me a long time, probably another like 3 years after I quit that band and started. As of guys, like our last show was in like October of 2003, and the first Graph Orlock show was like in January of 2004.
Yeah.
So we like already like it was already like I was gonna quit, and Adam and I started playing other stuff.
Right.
And it was like a complete reaction to that. It was like atonal.
Sure.
And, like there's no melodicism. There's no vocals at first. It was just all samples and music.
Right.
It was like meant to be instrumental.
Right. So when did, like, obviously, like you're saying, is a direct reaction. Like Graph Orlock was a direct reaction of obviously you becoming musically bored with what was happening with As Hope Dies. So when did the idea for Graph Orlock kind of like start to percolate in your head?
Adam and I have a lot of like stupid ideas, which are typically expressed in the artwork of Graph Orlock. And we did a bunch of stuff. We had like a bunch of like one theme, like stupid fake bands
of
that
course.
we'd like mess with at practice.
Okay.
And one was like a kind of a grindy band called Dead Babies on 10-Foot Pikes.
Great name. Great name.
And one of those songs eventually became a Gorlock song. But the name, we had a bunch of like fake. We had this one that was like, there was another fake band called Vehicular Manslaughter.
Okay.
That was, it was like, it almost exactly, it had like samples and it was like grindy, and it's what, like the idea just turned into.
So like, basically there were a bunch of jokes that you guys were obviously like participating in at the practice space.
Yep.
That all eventually kind of morphed.
They like coalesced into an actual band that people still think is a joke.
Right, exactly. That's pretty incredible. I didn't know, because I mean I remember shortly after obviously you were done with As Hope Dies, like Graph Orlock quote unquote hitting the scene and obviously playing shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, by the time we had the last As Hope Dies show,
yeah,
like we had already written like 8 Gorlock songs and like we're about to start playing shows. So.
Right. You were already wanting to hit the ground running, obviously.
Yeah. Which we did. It was like another year and we started touring.
Right.
Like in 2005 was the first Gorlock tour. And that was just like, it was, for whatever people think that band is.
Yeah.
And like, if they think it's a joke or not a joke, it's not a joke. But
right.
Whatever they think about the music, for me coming from like that kind of like locked in metalcore thing where you can play 3 parts, it's like a breakdown, a blast,
right.
a 1-2 fast beat. Like,
sure.
Like it was like completely open.
Right.
You especially playing like purposefully atonal music.
Right.
You can play like, oh, I want to put a black metal part right here. I just want this like crazy ridiculous part right here.
Sure. There's no real limits because you've set forth this ridiculous crazy narrative where it's just like, yeah, like we can kind of do whatever we want.
I still read a narrative about this band,
right?
That is kind of always been like one of the most entertaining parts, aside from violent shows.
Right.
I was talking to someone from Vice a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
About this new 7-inch.
Sure.
I probably went to, and
awesome.
She was like asking me about like the backstory.
Oh, sure.
How, like we're like, so you guys were film students at UCLA and all this stuff, and I'm like, yes, it still is like following us around.
Honestly, that's something we'll hit on a little bit later. Obviously, once we get into the deeper.
Kevin's dead. I think he's dead still. Everyone.
Oh my god! And that's what it's so funny because I mean, obviously an interesting idea that I've always. From when we started playing bands, like, because clearly, when you're 16, 17 years old, like, you don't have these hopes of making it. Like, it's like, everything's right in front of you. You just, like, take one step where it's like, oh, okay, our goal is to record a demo, whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and obviously Graph Orlock was born out of that same mentality where it's just like, oh, wow, it's kind of a joke. And then, like, like, oh, now we're able to do something as a direct reaction to what we've done in the past. And like, because clearly Graph Orlock has become this entity that is so mysterious for so many people.
I love that.
I know, and it's so interesting to me to, I mean, obviously knowing you guys as people, but then just like seeing the way that the public perceives you guys and like how deliberately mysterious and that's honestly, that's the way that I describe it, where it's just like deliberately mysterious. It's like, if people don't know you as individuals, like it's, it's this foreign concept.
And for me, that's amazingly fun.
Right.
Because the original story was like, we made a website like in '04 or something. I was like in Adam's room at his mom's house and just like, holy shit. And I just like started typing everyone's like backstory. And then like, and as people came in and out of the band, I mean, like usually always bass players.
Sure, of course.
Josh, like this story about Josh, like he's just like, his story was like he was at Taco Loco and he got into like a fight with a bunch of like vatos when he was like hyped up on speed because he was super mad because we kicked him out.
Oh,
and then
man.
like I had the 6131 address.
Okay.
And I posted that online. And it says like you can contact him here at like Orange County Correctional. Here's the address, Area Nation Wing.
Holy shit! That's incredible.
I was like just texted him one day. Like he had no idea. I'm like, what's your address?
That's so good. And that mischievous nature.
That's what it's like. I love it. That's super fun.
Yeah.
Just do like whatever you want. I mean, within reason, but
well, yeah.
It's like,
I mean, you get the thing that I've personally perceived of obviously like the fact that you guys have become, like this enigma, and once people that have no context for, like these like years. I mean, it's difficult for people to have context of where Graph Orlock comes from, is because obviously there's so many smoke screens that are put up deliberately and for fun. But the thing is, you guys don't do it maliciously. Like I look at a band like, and not to say that they're maliciously doing it, but a band like Fucked Up, where it's just like they deliberately started the band because all the members like hated each other and they felt like it would make interesting music because they did. And so it's like, but they have so many different like narratives because it's like, they don't have the same shared story. It's like you interview one guy, he has this story about the band. You interview another guy, he has a completely different story about the band. And so just seeing, like, not drawing the complete parallels between you two, but it's like, because you guys are actually like close to one another and are friends, and then you're able to dictate.
They have this weird, like, smoke screen is a good word. Weird art smoke screen.
Sure.
That is like, in some ways, I don't know. I've always been kind of, I mean, since 2003, like when we started fresh.
Right.
And various permutations of like, I've always tried to be very conscious of like how stuff is like represented because I don't like that. I don't like
totally
really like internet-y stuff.
Sure.
Like stuff like that. I think it's like important to like, even if you're gonna be a band like that, to like have some legitimacy about it. And I think like stuff that's comes across as disingenuous.
Sure.
That's the thing, is that I think like we totally come across as like assholes and like confusing people. And,
right.
But it's like not like fake, I guess.
Sure.
So.
Well, it's because I think there's a huge difference. The whole assholeness nature of Graph Orlock is, I mean, that's the voice. Like, and like if people take any time to obviously like get to know like, the band or in any way, shape or form, they realize, okay, like that's the shtick. Like, I mean, I use the word shtick not in a pejorative sense, it's like, that's, like I said, that's the voice. And I just find it funny because it's like, now like you mentioned Vice, where it's like, you guys have obviously crossed over into this weird, like, obviously like hardcore kids, like a kid that, goes to a Half Heart show, like clearly has no idea who Graph Orlock is, or maybe some of them do, but like now you've definitely crossed over into this weird, like sort of, hipster kids are allowed to like you guys because you're in this, mysterious
hardcore,
right? Yeah, mysterious. Actually,
mysterious hardcore guy.
Mysterious hardcore. Yeah, that could probably be a whole different genre in of itself. But
there's a bunch of mysterious hardcore guy bands.
Yeah, and so I just find it so interesting. Like, have you noticed, like, what changes have you noticed as like the kind of band has gone on, and like you have, received major coverage in Decibel? Like, obviously Decibel loves you guys and you love them.
Yeah, they kind of became friends.
Yeah, the Andrew Bosanelli guy, right? Yeah. Because I know you put out a book by him as well.
Yeah, 2 books.
2 books, right?
It's good shit.
And so, like, have you noticed people? Have you noticed like the crowds changing, or like how is that? Kind of.
No, actually,
still pretty much the same.
This is what's always strange, like being in a lot of different bands that are different, like
right.
But between like Graph Orlock and then Ghostland and Dangers, there's like a little bit of overlap.
That's true
because of touring and like members and whatever.
Right.
But like the reactions are always like completely different. Or like I typically you can tell like when Gorlock and Dangers tours together, which we've done a couple times, you can tell who's there for who.
Interesting.
Like there'll be a kid with a Have Heart shirt on, or be a kid with a Ceremony shirt on. That's like 17. You're like, not here to see Gorlock.
Right. You're like, you're here to see Dangers.
And then a lot like when we were in Australia, it was funny because those kids would all leave after Dangers would play.
Weird.
And then all these like just random people would be there for Gorlock.
Right.
Who like aren't necessarily don't look like hardcore kids or just like weirdos.
Sure.
Some like straight up crazy punk dude, and then one girl in Melbourne that's there because she like is a movie freak and got into it. Right.
Yeah, you guys are definitely able to pull from so many different crowds, and it's
frustrating to me though.
Sure.
That like dynamic at shows, or like we were talking about melodicism and like versus atonality.
Right.
Like Ghostland, it took me a couple years before I wanted to like really play melodic music anymore. But I loved like like propaganda and hot water music and all that stuff.
Of course.
And that band is geared towards doing that and like having lyrics about things I care about.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's not vapid.
But it's always like a fight with like between Gorlock and that band, and people like are just like confused sometimes. Or
do you find people like choosing a side? Like they're like, oh, I fucking love Ghostland, but I hate Graph Orlock.
Sometimes,
yeah.
Which is like, I don't know, for a while, for like a year, Adam was in Ghostland.
Right.
Also. So it was kind of like strange. I mean, aside from the fact that like I sing in both bands, it's really like they sound different.
It's just basically, I've always viewed it where it's just like, it's a different side of your musical perspective, where it's just like there are commonalities because like you said, you play in the band, but there's musically it's very different.
So it's always weird to me when someone just like, this band sucks and this band doesn't, or like vice versa.
Right. And
then Dangers is like a whole other thing.
Yeah, well, that's because. And when did you start playing with Dangers?
2009.
Yeah,
I guess. But we did. There's 2 LPs before the second LP. So,
right.
But that's like a whole other bag of
interestingness,
like hardcore webpage mayhem.
Yeah. No, there's definitely there's definitely a lot of baggage within that, but that's a whole different podcast in and of itself. That's where we have Al in as well. And so obviously a insanely important part of Graph Orlock is obviously like movie samples and everything you do. And I always found it like, I just remember, because I know that, I think it was either you or Adam that I was talking to, where it's like when I was working at Century Media, where I was like, this would be fucking hilarious if we put out a Graph Orlock record. Like not like as a joke, but just like, this would be great. More people need to hear this. And then, it never occurred to me, but it was like, you guys are unsignable from just like a more mainstream-ish.
That's like, I was talking about this with someone yesterday, that it's like a built-in kill switch.
100%. You're like, not interested. Do you want to clear these fucking 40 movie clips? Like, go ahead and go to 20th Century Fox, see if they'll clear any of that.
Yeah.
But, and so like that, that wasn't probably your intentional thought, but it was just kind of a byproduct of something that you guys were obviously...
The samples came from the fact that I hate on-stage banter from singers.
I can see why you love Taken then.
It was inter-song so that no one could talk.
Okay.
And there's no singer originally. So
right.
It was like, it made it like a kind of cohesive thing. And then as like that, before we were really playing shows, like as that became what it became.
Right.
And then we're just like, it's like cinema grind.
Sure.
And every other time I do like stuff for new records or like an interview or something about
right.
and Gorlock comes up, people were just like, how do you feel about this label that everyone hates being applied to you, cinema grind? It's like, I made that up.
Yeah, you're like,
it's funny.
It's hilarious.
And they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Or like you see online, people like, I don't know why it's called cinema grind. It's really stupid. I don't know why people call them that, but it's like,
you're like,
it's like,
we labeled it.
It's like super funny because I thought that it would be a funny splinter genre, like, you know, like
oh yeah,
porno grind or
oh totally
gore grind or whatever.
Yeah, like here's cinema grind. Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah. But there's definitely it's technically unsignable. So
right, which is like you said, it's a byproduct. It wasn't I mean, you guys obviously, like I was saying, the band wasn't spawned from like, hey, let's get signed to get big and make a living out of this.
which is why it's gratifying now because like the origins are like organic.
Yeah.
Because when it started, it was just like, let's do whatever we want and like we just played a shitload of shows.
Right.
People were like, what? Like, it makes no sense. And like toured, and we eventually did put out a couple records on another label. On Level
Plane, right.
But
which is still like, I mean, it's
under the radar.
Completely. Yeah.
But I get kind of worried about it occasionally, but
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you're just like, well, yeah, technically someone could come after us, but
you know. I'm pretty worried right now because I got a pre-order those new 7 inches about Heat.
Right.
Yeah. And like a week ago, I got a pre-order for like 3 of the covers from the director.
Really? Wow.
And I'm like worried. So
is it like they just pre-ordered the record? Just
3 covers.
Wow. Interesting. From the actual director. Like it was his actual name on the pre-order.
Yeah, in Beverly Hills.
That's insane.
So I'm hoping that that's just interest and not trying to sue me.
Yeah.
But you would think that they would, because
if it's the director, it's probably just the sheer curiosity of it, I'm guessing.
I mean, considering it's from '95.
Right. Yeah.
But as a label, I have gotten cease and desist letters before.
Interesting.
But never for Gorlock. It was for Owen Hart. From like Owen Hart's
from
family
the rest.
Foundation.
Yeah. From the rest. Wow, that's funny.
They're like, stop using this name.
Wow. And did you just ignore it?
I like forwarded it to them.
Yeah, you're
like not in the band.
You're like, sorry, I will pass this message along. They can do with it what they want.
And since then, they had to change their name.
Interesting.
Or license the name of a dead wrestler.
Yeah.
So yeah, their first LP it's called Owen Hart, and the LP was called Earth Control, and they've since changed their name to Earth Control, and they're doing a 7-inch called Dead Wrestler.
Oh, that's amazing! That's so perfect. Gosh, I love the randomness that comes up with cease and desist. Well, I like I said, I think you'll be okay. I think he's probably just ordering that out of sheer. I mean, that's super flattering that for whatever reason he's able to stumble across it.
Well, it was the day that this LA Weekly article came out.
Oh, there you go.
And like, it wasn't meant to be like this, but the headline was, Graph Orlock's new EP, Los Angeles, is all about the movie Heat. That's what it says in that.
So he 100% was like, oh, interesting.
And I get it, and I'm just like, it's like the feeling that you get when you get arrested.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, shit.
You're like, damn it. And obviously with the, like you were mentioning, you guys played a shitload of shows, and now at this point, you guys, I'd say that, maybe 70% of the touring that you do is all international?
Yeah, since 2008, basically.
Right. And that's probably just out of the fact that it's more enjoyable to tour other places in the United States?
Yep. I mean, by 2007 or 2008, when we did the last Graph Orlock US tour, we had done the US like in some permutation like 10 times, you know?
Right.
And then when you start like recognizing gas stations in Texas, you know, it's like time to go do something else.
Like, we got to scale back a little bit. Is that also a function just based on the fact that obviously people have completely separate lives that aren't able to tour, 200 days out of the year?
Yeah, I mean, we always only toured on like school breaks.
Right.
So it's like winters, springs, and summers. And, I mean, we do plan some time in the future, like before we're done doing like a US tour again.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like so much more fun to like go and play for. I don't know. It's like the grass is always greener thing.
Very true.
I mean, like the coasts are always really good.
Mm-hmm.
Middle of the country is like you got to drive there.
Yeah,
a lot.
Exactly.
And in Europe, everything's closer, and you kind of like you arguably get treated better and you have places to stay and you get
well,
food.
I think it's a common, anybody that's ever done anything over there realizes that it's like, oh, like it's a completely different touring network. Like,
they haven't. And what's sad to me here coming back every time,
you're like, oh,
is like they have this infrastructure that we don't have here for like, particularly in Southern California. There's like venues that last for a year, and then they get shut down. House shows are like almost impossible.
Right.
You just have to be in the neighborhood where people don't care at all.
Right.
Other venues like you don't want to play in LA. Like playing in venues like bars in LA sucks.
Yeah, it's terrible.
We played Troubadour together that one time.
I know. I remember. Yes.
And like people, all these metalheads, like, oh, my $3 back.
Yeah, this sucks. I've never been called gay more than that show, or faggot. Actually, I wouldn't say it was gay. Faggot. It was a very violent.
I remember. Yeah, it was like a $12 show, and they wanted their $3 back.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, sorry.
But in Europe, they have like. I was talking to someone in Japan about this last week or whenever I was there, and about how their views of like being into hardcore are totally different.
Yeah.
Like in Japan, they have. I mean, there's people that are way into it, but they have like a different setup of priorities. It seems. Mm-hmm. And here, people like go at it, and then they like burn out early.
Well, because I think you've hit on something there where it's because it's obviously so much more easily accessible just because of the sheer volume of people we have here. Not to say that, Japan has...
But the scenes are huge everywhere around here, or like...
Right.
In the U.S., there's kids, you can go play anywhere and people go to shows.
Sure.
And whereas in like Japan has like these hot spots.
Yep.
But they, like, I think because of that, they, it's like dudes are like 35 and they've been in the same band for like 15 years. Right. And they're really good. Right. But there's no like super rush. They'll play like a couple times a year.
Well, you look at Envy. I mean, give me a break. Envy. Yeah. Like they play once, maybe twice in Japan a year, if that.
Don't mess.
Yeah.
But here, it's like something you do when you're younger. People are like 22 and 23 and then they're done because they get like their normal job and they like, did that for a while.
Right, exactly.
And in Europe, they're like, I mean, there's those similarities, but they have like lifetime punks. Like
that's true.
One dude that's like 50 with one dread that runs a squat that still does shows every night.
Right.
And he's been there for 25 years.
Right. That's who he is. That's what he does.
And regardless of their like political standing, which most of them are, the autonomous zones, like they're anarchist based, but
sure,
they're city or state funded. So as an art and cultural space, so that allows for like, they can pay bands well.
Right.
They can buy food.
Right.
And here it's like...
Yeah, there's no subsidies. Yeah. It's obviously even in Canada, there's obviously Factor and there's grants that bands can utilize. But yeah, we don't got anything.
And now, like, I don't ever feel like old at shows or anything like that, but I hear people say that all the time. Like, or if you're in a band long enough, I mean, like, Gorlock's been in a band for almost 8 years now. Right. And people will be like, oh, that band just put out a record. That band's still together. I used to listen to them when I was like 18. Yeah. Like just because you dropped out,
right? Exactly.
Bands don't exist anymore.
Right. They still keep going on.
It's kind of weird. There's definitely like in this country, I think a really big like focus on not like it is in other places, but age and like how people feel about their age. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is kind of like always sad usually.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. I feel like that there is some, because I'm 32 or I'm 31 going on 32, and the idea of me being like the old guy at the show, like, that's true now. Like I'm older. Some kids are 17 and it's like, I'm clearly way older than them. Yeah. But like you said, I personally don't feel old because that's been my home. I've gone to shows for years, but it's like people that might be, have gotten into it later. It's like once they start to feel that sort of like the ageism, not because anyone's directing that towards them. That's just like the insecure feeling, and because it is a youth culture movement, they drop out for those same exact reasons. But
and then, not that I go to shows like every day, but I still play a lot of shows. And
of course,
I went to some really awesome shows this last weekend, Saw Hot Snakes play on Thursday.
Oh yeah, Alex's Bar.
Oh shit!
I heard they did not mess around.
They rip.
That's awesome. And
talk
about old guys. I mean,
yeah,
and they still are vital,
unstoppable.
Yeah,
I would elect president, vice president,
right? Dude, I back that ticket.
And then the day after, I saw John K. Samson at the Troubadour.
Oh yeah, sure.
That guy.
He's unbelievable.
His new record's amazing.
Yeah, really, really good.
First time I saw him play was in 98, 99 at Coos.
Yeah.
And then saw him the next year, and they came around, and I just I can't get enough.
No, he's incredible. And that,
Oh, but what I'm saying is that, like, it's kind of nice. Well, now that, like, the generation that's ahead of us
right
in music, there's, like, you see people, like, that are, I guess, 40 now.
Sure.
Maybe a generation and a half ahead of us.
Right.
People, like, that were in punk bands that used to go see, like, Avail or things like that, like, doing different stuff.
Yeah.
Like, Tim Barry's still playing, there's different, Chuck Reagan's doing different stuff.
Sure.
And, like, John K. Samson, like, after Propaganda and then Weaker Than,
yeah.
It's like, that is cool to me. Or even, like, I guess, like, the dudes in Propaganda are, like, 40.
Yeah.
But they rage, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And they came to this spot where they could do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it's, like, self-managed. It's, like,
Yep.
It was their own label for a long time. And,
yeah.
like, that is inspiring in a way because you don't have to give up because people think you're too old.
Yep. No, totally. Honestly, and it strikes me, like, obviously, I mean, you do a record label, Vitriol, and, like, that, in some ways, like, that in my opinion, that probably plays into, like, what you're trying to create as well, where it's just, like, this this cottage industry in a way, where it's just, like, I'm able to do this, like, into the foreseeable future. Because obviously it's like, you don't have these insane expectations of what the label can do. It's like, you're not marketing, like you're marketing, like, in the sense of you're getting it out there, but you're not, it's like, oh, I need to take out a full page ad revolver and all these other things
that's the best part about doing stuff on, like, a small scale and not having to deal with anybody else. And, like, originally, like, Level Plane disappeared.
Right. Yeah.
So we did a couple records with him, and then we were going to go on tour in 2009, and it was Ghost on the Graph Orlock, and I was like, we have these 2 new records, I guess I'll just put them out.
Yeah. It was just spawned out of necessity.
And then from there, I was like, why didn't I do this before?
You're like, this is, I mean, it's not easy, but obviously it
makes sense, though. It's like,
totally.
Especially if you're at shows a lot and stuff like that. Like, and from then it became, like, with all our friends' bands and people that we've toured with in different places and stuff, it's kind of like, I feel in LA in particular, there's, like, a whole lot of different bands that we know that we're friends with. And it's kind of like a documentation of stuff that's going on.
Sure.
It's like bands, like I said, like, bands around you start and break up, like, in 5 minutes.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of really good bands that no one ever hears. So
you're in a way, you're obviously trying to capture that with the records that you're able to put out from, I mean, because it's, even though it all falls in this sort of, hardcore punk genres in a way, you're trying to capture what those bands are doing at that special moment in a way.
Yeah, even, like, I don't know if you've heard this band Forming, but it's way like Archers of Loaf.
Okay.
Kind of eat. And they had members of all the bands on the label.
Sure.
Like, Dude from Ghostland and other people.
Right.
And that was, like, totally different sound, but it was, like, all the same dudes doing different stuff. And, like, since then they've broken up,
Right.
But, but people, like, I get emails all the time about that record. It's just a 7-inch. And people are like, oh, I love the 90s.
Right. I love the 90s. Give me that. And with your personal life, because like you said, you've just basically toured on breaks, and obviously Graph Orlock and Vitriol, you're not able to make a sustainable living off of that.
It pays for itself.
Right. You're able to sustain it and keep moving it forward, but not obviously be like, oh, cool, I'm making $30,000 this year because of Graph Orlock.
Yeah, it pays my phone bill only.
Right. So you've been teaching at Long Beach State since you said like 2008?
Yeah.
And was that something that you were always like you always knew you kind of wanted to teach?
Like halfway through.
Uh-huh.
I started in like right after high school in 2000.
Okay.
I went straight to Long Beach.
Sure.
And did my BA, and then I finished my MA in 06. So I went straight through that too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was going into grad school, I like decided that I wanted to do that because it's cool. You just get to stand around talking about things you like all day.
It's very true. I've had a few conversations about this, but the parallels between like getting up on stage and getting up in front of people, like, in a teacher perspective, it's like there's a very real connection there. And like you see, like, I mean, random examples, but it's like, like the singer of Stretch Armstrong. It's like a decent amount of people, I feel like, from the hardcore scene and punk scene have gone on in some capacity to like teach in some way.
Yeah.
And like, so does it, do you see the parallels? Like, do you get that same sort of, teaching-ish feeling, like being able to share something?
Yeah, sometimes, there's like I'm comfortable.
Right.
But there's always like nervousness when you're talking in front of like, you have to talk for like an hour and 15 minutes in front of 60 people.
Yeah.
Who mostly are just there because they have to be.
Right.
So there's that kind of feeling, and like before you play, it's like the same thing.
Yeah.
And I definitely see the parallels, because you have to you kind of like have to force yourself to do it.
Sure.
And there's like a little bit of like aggressiveness in there, because you have to be like, all right,
you have
up.
Right, exactly.
And then people respond to that because they don't see you as like some weird weakling.
Yeah, exactly. Right, some wallflower that's just be like, oh, we can walk all over this teacher.
And it shows. I mean, and we're like playing, it's the same thing. You have to like, you're kind of like putting yourself out there. So you
have to engage the audience.
You have to do it with reckless abandon.
Right.
Otherwise, there's like, not for like the benefit of people watching, but for your own benefit.
Of course.
Like you're doing it, you're playing for a reason, so you should do it for that reason instead of being like weird and
right. Yeah.
about it. But,
like I'm going to be super introverted. So,
yeah.
No, that's not. No one.
Don't ever play shows.
Right. Yeah. Just stay in your garage. What do you teach?
History.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I can see why that's obviously, like you said, that's getting up and talking about something that you're very passionate about.
Yeah, I love history.
Yeah.
Like, and that started from traveling,
mm-hmm.
because I wanted to know what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And then every year I'd go, because I was always on the school schedule and touring because I went to school.
Of course.
And then after that, Adam went to school, and then I started teaching. So we've never not been on a school schedule.
Right. You're like, hey, let's pick up and head out in February. It's
yeah.
Like, no. Not going to do that.
Which has made it nice, because you tour enough that you like going home, and you're at home enough that you want to tour.
Yeah. That's true. It's a as good of a balance as there can be, obviously.
But I think that's another reason that always appeals to people in bands, because there's like, you get 3 months off a year.
Yep. That's very true. Where it's like it gives them the ability to maybe pursue, musical endeavors. And
yeah, whereas I didn't really, I mean, that's always in the back of my mind, because I don't like getting locked into jobs that like you can't ever leave.
Right.
But it definitely is like nice, and I thought when I was like finishing grad school that I was like, okay, well, I might not be able to do this anymore.
Right.
And I don't want to not do it anymore.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
you always think of like some end, but I don't see one right now.
Right. Well, that's good. You've been able to like build yourself into this comfortable state.
Paint myself into a corner.
Right. You're good at that, right? And sort of to one random question, and then I'll ask another one to sort of wrap things up. Have any of your students have any sort of concept of what you do, like musically?
Yeah, some kind of shows.
Yeah.
I don't ever like.
Yeah, you're not
talk about it.
You're not flying in your classroom.
I should bring a web store over there.
How amazing would that be? You're just like, hey.
I have like a merch box. I check out new stuff out.
Who's interested in the new 7-inch?
There's kids that they find out sometimes. And,
sure.
And then they ask me about it. I'm just like, don't ever talk about that.
Yeah, don't talk. You can pull me aside. Don't ever ask me a question in front of class.
Some kid did say like, are you in this band? And we're like, shut up. I don't know what you're talking about.
That must be someone else. That's my twin brother.
Yeah. And just I mean, my department is always known.
Right.
And they think it's like cool.
Sure.
And stuff. But you don't want it to like conflict with your like you don't want people to not believe you because they don't. There's too much in Gorlock to like explain to a bunch of like 18-year-old normals.
Yeah, no, totally. That is so many different layers of the onion that it's just not. It's not worth peeling, or not, like you said, not
even more. Some of the more palatable bands, it's like you can't really explain that either.
No,
you're like it. Like, why are you screaming?
Right. It's like okay, like
whatever.
I don't even know where to begin with that. And sort of, like wrapping things up, the something else that I've noticed about, kind of the way that you present Graph Orlock and stuff like that. I mean, now you're doing obviously like more interviews and stuff like that. But for a while, like, you kind of kept that air of mystery where it's like you wouldn't put the band publicly out there, or, put yourself out there in the way where it's just like, hey, like, really, like, this is me as a person.
I would just lie all the time.
Right.
That was really fun, is I had to lie on every interview about things about people dying in the band and us being film students.
You had to, like, keep a narrative in your head of, like, this is like, oh, yeah, I have to pull, or you just obviously didn't even have to be consistent. Like,
no, it was great. I mean, still now, like, to some degree, it's easier, like, when it was just Gorlock and not a label.
Right.
Like, because now the label, like, kind of connects all the dots.
It's true, yeah.
So people are going to know who you are if you do that.
That's very true.
Whereas, like, but when it's a strictly Gorlock interview, it's, like, still really fun. And, like, there's, like, an article in Terrorizer last year that was, like, a whole page about how Kevin is dead. And, like, it says, like, oh, this new Doombox record is so pissed off because of all their angst that their singer being run over by a cement truck on the WB Backlot Studios.
Oh, my God. That's incredible. Like, I'm sure it's just, like, it's entertaining for hours, and the shit, like, it's kind of like a boomerang. Like, you throw it out there, and then when it comes back to you, you're just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Anywhere we tour, someone's just like, so, I don't know if I should ask, but how did the singer die? Like, oh, it's cool, I'll tell you. And then, or like,
oh my God.
Even something as, like, simple as, like, the insert for the Doombox thing is just, like, it's so entertaining because it's, like, super sarcastic.
100%. I mean, like, you can't, like...
On the CD face of that thing, there's, like, executive producer names and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just put that in, like, a Middle Eastern name generator. And then I put it on the CD, and like you look on like Discogs, and it says like produced by Muna Basma's Body. Yeah.
So good. That's so good. So what do you have in the foreseeable future? Whatever the next like 6 months that you have for Ghost Slim Dangers and all the stuff you have going on. I know you obviously Graph Orlock has the new record, or new 7-inch that's coming out.
Yeah, it technically came out Tuesday.
Okay, there you go. Street date, man. You got to stick to street date, right?
4/10 street date.
4/10. There you go.
Very arbitrary.
Yeah, just here we go.
It comes out when I have it.
Right.
So that Los Angeles 7-inch just came out. In all of July, we're doing a European tour and like hitting on the festivals and stuff.
Sure.
Right before I went to Japan, we just finished a new Ghost Slim LP.
Okay.
It's going to come out in probably June.
Nice.
Because I'm trying to do one a year. There's like a trilogy of them.
Yeah. You want to keep that going,
the ghosty thing.
Right.
And then Dangers and Gorlock. We, like last week, a week and a half ago, we just got back from the Japanese tour.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be a record at some point.
Yeah.
Dangers is just like...
getting everybody on the same page.
It's ridiculous.
I can only imagine.
And then, label stuff. All those records I'm going to put out.
Right, of course. All those that you're going to put out, and then all the other stuff that you're going to put out.
And then maybe a new Comadre record.
Oh, nice. That'd be great. So there you have it. You can find out more about Justin and all of his bands at graphorlock.com. You can also find his record label. And tune in next week for another new show. I'm not going to tell you who the guest is because I want to keep you in suspense. So subscribe, check it out, email, tweet, etc., etc. Thanks for your support.